listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we will be wrapping up the action from this weekend's IPL fixtures. Jadeja has been fired, Dhoni is back, Lucknow Supergiants, they keep on winning. Mumbai, they've finally done it. They've broken the duck at the 9th time of asking. They've won a cricket match. They batted Surya Kumar Yadav at 3. It worked. Who saw that coming? Who saw that coming? It's going to be a good show. It's been a classic. Kohli scored runs. Kohli scored runs, for crying out loud. They weren't fast runs, but they were runs. They will go down against his average. All is right in the world. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe Brown. Max, how are you doing?
Hello, very good, thank you. Yeah, against is very much the operative word in that sentence, isn't it, Jack, with Kohli's runs?
Yeah. And Dan Weston, you're with us as well. How are you doing, Dan?
Yeah, I'm good, Jack. Yeah, and it certainly did go against his strike rate.
Max, we're going to do a game, then we're going to do messages for the listeners. We're going to do Chennai Super Kings v Sunrisers, the match that just wrapped up over on Sky Sports Cricket, or whichever other channel you watch that on.
Bein Sports, Star Sports,
Willow Cricket,
Willow
something like that.
Yeah.
Dhoni's back. You're the man in yellow on this podcast. You're a big diehard Chennai Super King fan. Were you happy to see him?
Bread.
Were you happy to see him back in the side? And were you excited by the impact he made, instantly plucking a victory? Out.
Well, what more can you say about a man whose aura is such that he can take a team who are down and out against a team who are on an unprecedented run of, well, it's not unprecedented, but it is for Sunrisers, 6 games on the bounce and instantly change fortunes. He's made Ruturaj Gaikwad good again. He brought, I assume it was entirely his decision to bring back Devon Conway, who also weighed in with runs. And not only that, had the confidence to promote himself to 3 as the finisher right at the end, which added a crucial 8 runs to the total, which could have made all the difference today. It is nice to see him back, in as much as it's nice to see Jadeja sort of relieved, literally relieved of the captaincy, like both in the sense of relieving him from the captaincy and thank God we don't have to watch Jadeja fail to be a captain anymore. So yeah, it was nice on that point of view, and obviously as well nice to see Sunrisers lose. Our sort of kind of meme hatred now of Sunrisers just because we said they'd be bad and they were good.
I don't hate Sunrisers. I mean, I actually said that they would be better than... Ross wanted to say they were the worst team in the IPL, and I
well, they're evidently not.
And I said they're definitely not the worst team in the IPL, are they? I said that's Gujarat. Gujarat are the worst team in the IPL.
Yeah, they're fun. They've got Twatia. That's the difference. I don't begrudge them.
Okay, so what happened in the cricket?
Well, CSK batted first, and as mentioned, it looked like for a moment Gaikwad and Conway were going to literally bat through the entire innings. They shared an opening stand of 182, only 20 short of the eventual total. Ruturaj Gaikwad falling on 99, proving not to be a selfish man and nurdling a single for his ton to get back into things. But again, nevertheless, wonderful performance from him. Probably didn't make the most of the position they were in, CSK. Kind of slowed down a bit towards the end and arguably left a few runs out there. But fortunately for them, it didn't matter because Kane Williamson decided to make a 12, 10 run and over. I can't do maths. 10 run and over chase into a 13, 14 run and over chase all on himself by nurdling the ball around as an opener. We joked, didn't we, that in the preview, that CSK's issue against Sunrisers might be not taking power play wickets, and that actually that might not be such a bad thing if they keep Kane Williamson in for a while. And turns out that was exactly what happened, and it was ultimately too much for then Nicholas Pooran to do. Although he did treat Mukesh Chowdhury to a bit of a blasting in the final over, but fortunately, it didn't matter.
I actually thought at the halfway point that the Sunrisers had a really good shot at chasing this. I think.
Well, they weren't far off. What were they? About 90 off a three, weren't they? About halfway, roughly.
Yeah, I mean, I would caveat that statement by saying that Abhishek and Rahul Tripathi were going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting, as by probably a fair distance, the most dynamic of the players we've seen. Their side
Golden Duck's not what you want from your
Yeah, no, when he was out, I mean, when Tripathi came to the crease, they were probably 50-50 to win the game, and then when he was out, they probably had a 10% chance with that batting lineup.
Yeah,
it falls away. I mean, Markram's played okay, hasn't he, across this IPL, but sustaining that over a long period, I don't think is sort of in his locker. Puran actually finishes with decent numbers, but he did help himself to a few runs after the match was over. Dan, what did you make of proceedings?
Got so many views actually. It was a really interesting game from a number of perspectives. First of all, gotta tip your hat to CSK openers batting through almost. That was so good. And I think is that the second time we've seen from Gaikwad that he's not taken the easy run and gone big to try and put the team first, and I like that. And then Devon Conway. I mean, we know. Well, I know he's a very, very good player. I think he just got married, so this was a perfect wedding gift for him. 85 or 55, unbeaten. Not convinced about the Dhoni master plan of going in at 3.
Didn't you see him the other day?
Yeah,
he's back, baby.
He's back.
I'm not a buyer. And then let's see how the captaincy pans out. I mean, ultimately, Jack, you mentioned before his captaincy worth about 3 runs an innings, and as a captain, generally, you are the definition of your playing group that you've got in front of you to work with, and I think that 3 runs over this team possibly still could get them to struggle. And then in reply, I love these type of innings actually, where a team who love like knocking off 150 chases and nerdling it around and stuff, get put under the pump because they've got to chase 200. I love these chases because it shows who's got it in their locker and who hasn't got it in their locker. And unfortunately, great player as he is in perhaps other formats, I'm not sure that Kane Williamson has that in his locker right now. 14 crore is just looking more and more and more overpriced for him, particularly when you could have had Rashid Khan for the same money. 47 off 37. I know that's a maths in advance of the show. And if you're chasing 203 and you've scored 47 off 37, you need to score about 100, almost 190 strike rate for the rest of the balls as a team to win the match. So if that and he struck at 127, that is putting your teammates under unnecessary pressure and pressure that who can sustain that over a long period of time? Not Andre Russell can't even hit 190 strike rate over a long period of time. So it's not a winning strategy knocking it around. And one of his sixes, 4 boundaries in 37 balls. One of them 6 balls off a free hit. So, it was, I think, quite a badly negative expectation innings. Horan kind of put the gloss on what was a pretty comfortable defeat at the end. I mean, if Mukesh Chowdhury is a death bowler, I'll be amazed in the long run. I mean, his numbers this year when he's bowled at death have been absolutely horrendous. So, for me, CSK probably be better off treating him as a power play specialist and
which they probably should do, because that's what they're missing. Because of Deepak Chahar, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Strange to use him at the death.
Bowling like, I don't know, 1-3-5-7 even straight through, like what Deepak Chahar done quite a lot of time. That's how I would treat that situation. And then as I think you guys said earlier, if Abhishek Sharma and Tripathi don't do a lot of the heavy lifting, that's game over, and so it proved. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that effectively sort of what's their innings. They have had a couple of 170s, haven't they, SRH, where things did go their way, and they were sort of 170s where they had 2 overs to go, so it's not necessarily completely beyond them. But Abhishek Sharma and Patty are instrumental, I think, in all.
They didn't have
all of
Rashid
those
Khan and
performances.
Tuatia, so it was beyond them.
Yeah, Max, I'm interested to hear your thoughts and go into a little bit more detail here on Dhoni returning as the captain. Why? What's the thought process there? I mean, there are rumours that it's a CSK management decision and it wasn't Jadeja throwing in the towel.
Yeah,
but weird. It is kind of weird, isn't it, to go back to Dhoni?
It's really weird. It's really weird because if Dhoni was an option to go back to after trying to Jadeja, and you've made the decision in the auction to retain MS Dhoni, why would you then take the captaincy away from him? I mean, it was the only reason to do it in the first place is if you think, okay, like Dhoni doesn't want like to be the captain anymore and wants to like pass that mantle on and maybe help out it, like mentor that side. Dhoni the mentor, we joke about it, but maybe that's what the route that he was looking to go down. So then after 9 games to then just flip it straight back, it really is. I find it really confusing in the context of the fact they made the decision in the first place, like the retention, the man that he is, the fact that he is such an important player because of his captaincy, because of how good he is. He's a better captain than anyone in the IPL. So it's just it makes the decision in the first place seem bizarre as opposed to sort of going back to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean it was strange, wasn't it, how he kind of gave up the job on the eve of the tournament, more or less.
Did they not say that they were sort of planning it for a long time as well, which makes it even stranger? Because if purely as a playing commodity, you wouldn't pay that for Dhoni.
No.
Do you know what, right? I still, I've written a lot about guys who have big brand value and that they don't represent value for money on the pitch. And I actually get quite a lot of abuse from people saying, "Oh, well, their value to the team is worth far more." And it's just such a weird hill to die on, because why would you? You're a fan. Why would you care about that? Surely you want the actual results, right? And it's not like football where you sell 1 million MS Dhoni shirts, you can reinvest that into your playing squad. Well, you can't in the IPL because everyone's got the same budget.
Yeah.
So
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's. I mean, like,
fan want a commercially viable player when all the money goes to owners and they can't reinvest the money. It's weird.
Well, I think maybe that is you've answered your own question there. That all the money goes to the owners. It's like Manchester United. Yeah, they make decisions that aren't based on creating a good football team because it sells loads of shirts, and then they don't invest that money back in the team, really, do they? They've got a stadium that's sort of falling down, and a 5th place finish. Like I think that's what it is. In part,
business
anyway.
move.
I mean, he's not completely useless. Let's be fair.
But he doesn't merit that price.
No, he doesn't. Yeah, and I think they probably know that, but it's not.
Yeah, but I think mainly in the context of it being a mega auction, and there being you want maybe more than a couple of years out of one of your retentions, perhaps. But I mean, like you say, Jack. I mean, it seems like a business explanation makes sense. Also, like from a fan point of view, you can imagine not retaining Dhoni going down pretty badly.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting hate
we're getting pelters in the
live
chat.
Yeah.
So I want to ask the guys. I want to ask the guys in the chat here, and they can actually feel free to comment. How? I'm not saying that he's at this level yet at all, but I'm just in a hypothetical world. How bad does a veteran legend have to be before you want to get rid of them?
Well, let's wait for some answers to that. It'll probably take a few seconds to come through because I think there's a latency thing.
Because there's a few teams who are going to have to make this decision in the next year or two.
Well, I think Mumbai might have to make that decision sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
It's not looking great there. RCB sort of made the decision, or got Kohli to make the decision sooner than I think we thought. Maybe that was good management from Hessen, or maybe not. I don't think we'll probably never get to the bottom of that one, will we? But it is looking more and more likely that that looks a better decision now than it did sort of at the time, doesn't it? Moving Kohli on. Max, is there anything else from this match? I mean, it was a reasonably entertaining contest, wasn't it? 200 runs, plays 189 runs. It was kind of a shame that Sunrisers literally didn't threaten at all to close that gap until after the game was over. But from a CSK point of view, they did some other good things, didn't they?
Yeah, it was from a CSK point of view. Obviously, it was nice to show that they've still got it, and another example of saying that if they want to defend totals with the bowling attack they've got, they're going to have to put 200 up, and I think that's pretty evident. But Sunrisers, yeah, I mean, it's sort of what we said, isn't it? Like they just they don't quite have the firepower to challenge those higher scores if a couple of players don't fire. But it's a really good result for the rest of the IPL and the people, the chasing pack, as it were. It's been a good weekend for that, I think, from that point of view, with the bottom boys, the boo boys, taking points off some of the higher uppers. So it was a decent game. Never necessarily in jeopardy, the result, despite what it might have looked like at halfway. But it makes the last sort of third of the IPL like a real bun fight, doesn't it?
It should be good. I'm glad it's tightened up. I'm glad it's Sunrisers that have done part of the tightening as well. If I'm on it, look, there's $400 on the line. So it's.
What is this? I don't know about
have you not heard about this? So, Ross, there's a couple of guys, one on our Patreon, I think one in the chat, who made a bet with Ross that if Sunrisers make the playoffs, he has to wear some Sunrisers gear for every podcast for the rest of this year. If they don't, they're going to give him $200 each. So, we're going to get a cut of that action. So.
You've won a slice, have you?
I mean, it's a free roll for me. I'm not wearing any Sunrisers kit. I'm not stupid enough to make that bet. But Ross was. So he awaits anxiously.
That's why we call him Shock Joss Ross.
Let's maybe move on. There's a few people who have answered your question, Dan. Never seems to be the general feeling. Never if the team wins.
So just making an extension from that point of view, does that mean that if they were, football supporters, would we have a Manchester United team with perhaps Bobby Charlton and Mark Hughes and Peter Schmeichel still playing? Do we have Newcastle? They'd have Alan Shearer up front, definitely.
They probably would, to be fair.
Liverpool, Mark Owen. Tottenham would have Gary Lineker and Klinsmann. I mean, that's a predator duo in itself. I mean, where do you draw the line?
Well,
I guess the point is that it's up to them, isn't it? They've earned a certain.
I don't know if it. I mean, my opinion on this, it isn't up to them.
Another sport.
No, it isn't. But that's your opinion. But I'm saying that's what I'm attributing this the sort of that side of the argument to, is that once you've earned a certain amount of stock in the game, you kind of have the right to sort of end it on your own terms. Obviously, that's not always going to be the case, because someone might say, I want to carry on playing till they're 50, but it doesn't happen very often, does it?
Well, it could well do. I mean, like,
and I for one would love to see it. I want a 50-year-old Dhoni in the IPL,
but with a runner.
Yeah, fuck it, it'd be great. I'm fully on board.
I'm going to do the messages for the listeners, then we're going to do this morning's match. So the messages for the listeners. 1, seriouscricket.co.uk. Use the code TCP22 for 10% off your cricket gear. It is May the 1st. in the UK and everywhere. Actually, it's made. It's the universal date thing.
Well, not everywhere.
Okay.
Vanuatu, it's probably second.
Good call.
And
Good
Australia,
call.
yeah.
Good call. It's May the 1st here. Means it's the beginning of the cricket season, doesn't it? Next weekend, I think league cricket starts across the UK. You've got time to get some gear in before that TCP 22 series cricket. Where to do that? Look in the show notes. And we are on Patreon. Patreon.com/thecricketpod. That's in the show notes too. I can spell the cricket pod if that would help. TheCricketPod.
Well done.
Yeah, and you can sign up to support the show for £4 a month. It keeps us going. It's basically the show is funded by Patreon. Also, you get loads. You get a bunch of stuff, free shows, extra shows rather. Lots. I'll move on. Patreon.com/thecricketpod. Max, what happened this morning?
Oh, this morning, Jack, it was a battle between two of the chasing pack, Delhi Capitals, who have usually, for some reason, so far had a game in hand on most teams. Looking a bit of ground to catch up, but with a strong net run rate, looking like they've got a chance against the Lucknow Supergiants, who largely have been dependent on KL Rahul scoring runs for winning games. Fortunately for them today, KL Rahul scored some runs. So and again, so did Deepak Huda, 50s each, both of them, put up a pretty decent total of 195 for 3. But you do have to wonder, don't you, if you're only 3 down at the end, whether maybe you could have gone a bit faster. But nevertheless, 195, decent score. Delhi Capitals almost got there despite a pretty poor start. 13 for 2 off of 3 overs is not the way to go about chasing nearly 200. But the lower middle order between them managed to put some impetus back in the innings. Mitch Marsh, Rishabh Pant, Rovman Powell and Akshar Patel all weighing in with useful contributions, but ultimately they've just left a little bit too much for themselves to do and fell an agonising 6 runs short at the end, despite Kuldeep Yadav almost doing the business and continuing the renaissance of the Yadavs, as long as your name's not Lalit.
Lalit had a couple of good games earlier in the tournament. I don't know why they keep making the poor man bowl. And it always seems to be. Sorry, go on, Dan.
You got 2 catches.
You get 2 catches. Okay, there you go. Year of the Yadav. It's still on. This was kind of an interesting one. I thought that Delhi blew this a little bit in the chase. I thought they'd got to a position where they probably should have won, and then the wheels came off, and I thought we'd be having the KL Rahul did he bat fast enough discussion again.
Away with it.
As it is, yeah. Well, I mean, does he get away at 77 or 51 balls? I think that's a pretty decent knock.
Yeah, no,
yeah. I think you have to look at as Rishabh just put in the chat. You have to look at the world's best finisher in T20 cricket for blame for where they perhaps didn't make the most of it. 17 off 16. It's not really.
It was. I thought this. I mean, we talked about Dhoni a lot. We didn't really talk about his batting. I thought in both games the teams batting first got into positions where they could have won the match more, basically at half time, and in both situations they left 30 or 40% equity for the other team still on the table. And here I thought Delhi were going to cash in, but they didn't quite have the firepower, did they? Max, where did you see this? Well, what did the Supergiants do that impressed you?
Well, they won the game. That's the
Look at this cutting edge insight. The cricket podcast.
I mean, I would like to know where Mohsin Khan has come from, because he has come into the team and he's been a revelation in every game he's played, pretty much. And 4 for 16 today is basically basically the key, isn't it? He's did the business at the end. He did the business at the start, getting David Warner, who's actually had a pretty decent couple of weeks. So that's and you just look at his figures compared with everyone else's. He's completely set apart from Ravi Bishnoi, who we expect to do pretty well. He's had a couple of dodgy days, but ultimately you can bank on him. And everyone else apart from those two has gone over 10 and over. So he has finding him and picking him. That's what's impressed me about Lucknow. I don't know where he came from, but good on them for benefiting from Avesh Khan being injured in that game.
It's such a weird one because, like, this is definitely for me the most random IPL of all time. I mean, like, there's guys performing in this tournament where they're really, to be really honest, hasn't been a great deal of evidence that they're particularly suited to this step up. I mean, the Weston Khan plays for Uttar Pradesh in SMAT, and he hasn't even played every game for them or been a massive regular in the last couple of years. I mean, this year, I've got the numbers for them down here on my computer, and he got comfortably out-bowled by Ankit Rajput in from a numbers perspective this season in SMAT. Mavi completely wiped the floor with him. So did Yash Dayal. So the fact that he can come into the IPL and take 4 for 16 is just weird. And yeah, maybe he's just kicked on, but maybe it's luck. Maybe it's variance. Maybe because he plays for Lucknow Super Giants, he's rather fortunate. No, in all seriousness, there's a number of instances where this has happened, or a team has made some really, I think, poor choices, either at auction or strategically, but they've got away with it because their marquee players have been unbelievable.
I think to some extent the top 2 run scorers in the tournament, Butler and King Legend, have covered up where some of the other where some strategic errors that both of those teams have made. I'm still not absolutely convinced that Lucknow, the second best team. Well, I'm definitely not convinced that Lucknow are the second best team in this tournament.
Me too.
But they win a lot of matches, and while King Legend is scoring those runs, they will continue to be really competitive, I think. I mean, Krunal Pandya in your top 5 is a strange one, isn't it? Ayush Badoni, we've seen him be good, and we've seen him kind of be maybe slightly less good. Is Stoinis the best finisher in the world? I mean, I'd probably argue that he wasn't. But you've got a guy at the top of the order who's churned out, what is it now, 400 runs? 400 runs at a pretty decent strike rate, and even and a pretty decent strike rate, kind of by his standards as well. I mean, he's had years, hasn't he, where he's struck at sort of 130 this year. I haven't got the numbers up in front of me.
451 at 145.
That's pretty good. You're taking that from your opener all the time, aren't you? That's
commentators I love is Basra.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, we spoke about this again on the last time you were on, Dan. I think that might be a slightly more viable strategy than perhaps I thought anyway before the tournament. Having just one guy who is, or 2 guys who are really quite stable but are able to score at sort of 140 plus, like Butler and King Legend. You can build basically a whole team around that, apparently. Now that's why is that possible this year versus previous years? Probably the pitches are a little bit better, but also there's just fewer guys that can get them out. Looking at this Delhi bowling attack, who is the guy that you think lines up really well against King Legend? There sort of isn't one. There might be guys who he scores less quickly off. Akshar Patel might be able to tie him up a little bit. Doesn't love left arm off spin, I don't think, does he? But Akshar Patel's quite a defensive bowler, so even if you can tie him up, he's probably not going to get him out, and then he can just keep going, and possibly near the end, really, really take off. It didn't happen today, did it? But still, 77 for 51 is good going. And then round him, you've got De Kock. He's had a couple of knocks, hasn't he? And Deepak Huda's been maybe one of those guys you're sort of talking about, Dan. Slightly surprisingly good.
Yeah, no, he's definitely falls inside bracket for me. Yeah.
Max, from the Delhi point of view, it was a pretty crucial match for them, I thought.
Yeah.
They had the opportunity, didn't they? This isn't quite their game in hand. Is their game in hand the next game? Or was this their game in hand? Anyway, they'd have been 5-4. They'd have been
Depends
5-4.
who you're comparing them to.
They would currently be sitting in 4th place if they'd managed to pull off this chase. Will they be disappointed? And how much of is this a hammer blow to the hopes of Delhi Capitals?
It's not a hammer blow because they've still got a better net run rate than everyone except for Sunrisers. So
That's better than SRH.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the best.
Oh, is it? My table's not updated.
Yeah, I guess.
Yes, so of course it hadn't updated from the defeat. Of course, I had it open from before it was confirmed. So yeah, best net run rate in the IPL despite sitting in 6th. They've played a game less than RCB and Lucknow. They're still well in it. They will be disappointed that they didn't chase it down today, obviously, because like you say, it looked within their grasp. They'll have been happy that they managed to keep it to below 200, given where Lucknow were. So they'll have had a bit of positive mindset impetus going into their batting innings, and like you say, they had a good shot at chasing it down. So that will be a disappointment for them, but they're again still proving to be a force, and despite the lack of Anrik Nortje, who we all said would be so key to their makeup this year. So I think whether or not he'll be able to come back or not, we'll see. But they've got enough about them for sure to catch, rein in some of the other guys. So certainly not terminal for them, but it does mean they need to get a move on.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, Dan, and this is a little bit tangential to the game, to be honest, is some of the choices that teams are making to bowl the 20th over of the innings when it comes to chases. We saw Stoinis today. He had a big cushion, 27 runs, big cushion. But he nearly blew it. Like, he bowled a ball that Akshar Patel should have hit for 6 with sort of 3 balls to go, and I think he knocked it down to long on, didn't he? And they didn't run. And he did get hit for 6 off the last ball. What's the thinking, if there is any, behind some of the guys that have been given the final over? Because it's we've seen it bite teams multiple times in this tournament.
Yeah, we have. Yeah. I think there's a few reasons there. Number one, I think that there's a scarcity of good bowlers, good death bowlers in the player pool, and it's a lot easier to acquire players who are decent in the power play, because you can, a lot of time, like a red ball bowler will be able to bowl sort of what people call test match line and length, and get it does do well in the power play, or it's certainly acceptable. Secondly, I think we've seen a swing, not just towards what I just said, but also that kind of desire to find players who can take power play wickets, because I think it's perceived to be slightly increasing in importance. And number three, I think what we've also seen to some degree is teams going into a match with a plan of bowling. So it's 4 overs between 2 guys, they're specialists at the death. And then because the match might be going out of hand, they've been forced to gamble and bowl one of those guys early to try and buy a wicket or stem the flow of runs. And then that means that they've got to kind of shuffle the pack a little bit and find some random guy at the end to bowl the 20th.
Yeah. Is it the best way of doing things? I mean, I know that's really contextual, isn't it? Because sometimes it might be, if the other team needs 7 and over for the last 3 overs, you might as well bowl Bumrah or like whoever it is.
Well, this is it.
But in some of these situations, and I thought this game may have been one of them. I would want a better bowler bowling with the 20th over. I think than Stoinis.
Definitely. Yeah, I must admit, I'm quite a big fan of the set role clarity of having 2 bowlers bowling 2 overs each, 17 and 19, 18 and 20. Seen teams in the past have that kind of clear role clarity, and it's worked well for them. Not seeing it so much this year. So yeah, I think there's a lot of factors. Player pool is certainly one of them. because obviously with the expansion to 10 teams, there's not enough good death bowlers. And some teams, the good death bowlers have been bowled in the power play.
Yeah, we've seen some strange stuff. RK has just sent us a super chat, 99 there. So he says, so looking forward to this after the preview. RCB lost, Rajasthan Royals lost, CSK won. Not sure what the call was on Lucknow. Delhi, although he roots for Delhi, so it's neither here nor there. Max, did we both? I feel like we went for different teams.
You went Lucknow.
I went.
You went
Lucknow
and I went Delhi. But I went CSK. Obviously, I obviously went CSK for the Sunrisers game. So I got one.
You got okay.
I got one. I haven't drawn a blank.
Not too bad, is it?
It was the one that I guessed because I'm a fan, not because of who I thought would win. But that's as OK says, that's neither here nor there. So it's fine.
Cool. Anything else from this game that people would like to discuss, Dan?
No, I'm good with it. I mean, like I think that you said earlier about there was a point where you think maybe Delhi were not favourites necessarily in the chase, but not far off it. And I look at there's probably a couple of points really. First of all, when Pant and Rovman were set, and then Pant gets out, and they needed sort of sub 10, the sub 11 and over, and then probably when Rovman gets out, when he's set, and so and Axar Patel's kind of in a bit as well. Then those are the two, I think, real turning points where you get sometimes that's all it takes. A wicket at the right time. And again, that's a lot of the time that is variance, and I think a lot of the teams sort of at the top of the table have benefited from that variance.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably fair, and we'll get on to talking about one of them in a moment. First of all, though, just if you're watching on the live stream now, or if you're watching on the recorded live stream tomorrow, or in 45 minutes' time. If you wouldn't mind clicking like and subscribe, that gives us a little boost. I mean, obviously, you can go further than that. You can become a Patreon, a member. You can send us a super chat. But as a bare minimum, if you like the content that we're producing, in fact, if you hate it, I mean, it doesn't really bother me either way. But token gesture, click like, click subscribe. That'd be nice of you. Yesterday's evening match, Max, was between Rajasthan Royals and the Mumbai Indians. Do you want me to give a little summary here, or do you remember what happened?
Why don't you take this one? Give me a break.
Cool. So the Rajasthan Royals, they batted first, and it didn't go absolutely swimmingly, to be honest. Joss Butler, uncharacteristically bad, I think you'd probably say, for a lot of his innings. He got fed a few Shokeen balls. Or pies towards the end of his innings at 24 or 4 balls, and it ends up looking okay instead of really, really quite bad. But what he was doing was sort of symptomatic of how Rajasthan played in general. Devdutt Padikkal, 15 from 15. Sanju Samson, I think, because the other two were clogging things up so much, really went for it. 16 off 7, and then he went. Daryl Mitchell, you might be wondering at home why he's at the IPL. I think we're probably wondering that. Actually in our homes as well. 17 for 20.
Someone called him the Dream 11 game changer of the match.
It's fair.
And then even sexy Shimron, 6 from 14. For once, he doesn't do anything. Ravi Ashwin sort of saves the day at the end, doesn't he? He gets 21 off 9 balls to show that.
Should have batted him 3.
Yeah, exactly. And Rajasthan, they get to 158, which looked. I would say. I mean, I was watching this game. I didn't think that was an awful score. I thought the pitch was pretty tacky. It was quite slow. It was definitely a little bit low. And I thought that they had a decent chance, Rajasthan Royals. I also thought, and I'm going to give myself credit for this, that it might be the kind of surface that suited Ishan Kishan, a little bit more UAE than some of the more recent pitches.
Not quite the Sharjah pudding, though.
No, but it's a little bit less pace. I mean, I'm thinking like 2020 Ishan Kishan here, on those pitches.
Yeah.
They weren't bad pitches. They weren't like last year's IPL pitches in the UAE, but they are like a little bit slower than the ones we've seen in the sort of Maharashtra this season. he got 26 from 18 and got Mumbai off to a decent start. Then I think Rohit gets out like he always does now, and Suryakumar Yadav came in at 3. We'd been asking for this for a while. He gets 51 from 39 balls. I mean, it's similarly to the Joss innings. It's not the most stunning piece of batting you'll ever see, but bearing in mind the target, it was pretty handy. Tilak Varma at the other end, 35 from 30. I'd probably say the same for him. It's very difficult to rave about that innings, but it did help them to win the match. Because it's Mumbai, and because it's the season they're having, they did nearly blow up. They did really nearly blow up. But they had a saviour. Another guy we've been saying should probably have been playing, Tim David. 20 from 9 balls. He does an Ashwin. He gets them over the line. Daniel Sam's solitary 6 as well helps out, and they win with 4 balls to spare. Their first win of the season. I guess that's good for them, isn't it? The team I used to support. So I'm glad I've abandoned my support of Mumbai Indians for a far better, a far better team. But it's one part of me did kind of want to see them go 0-14. I'll be honest. I thought that would be
full Cleveland Browns.
I thought that would be pretty funny. But another part of me also wanted them to play their on paper best 6 or 7 top that'll play literally play this batting order to prove us right. And they did. So it's the 0-14 is gone, but on the other hand, vindication. Max.
Yeah, shame it came a little bit too late, isn't it? They perhaps maybe they should sign you up, Jack, as a member of the coaching staff. It was this. I mean, this is a pretty bad result for Rajasthan Royals, isn't it? Given how everything's gone, but there was no way that Mumbai were going to go through the IPL without winning a game, because they just have too many good players, mostly with the bat, but
they
also
weren't
Jasper
playing
Bumrah.
some of them.
No, you're right. I mean, they basically completely abandoned the what would be common sense, I suppose, of playing your best team, and funnily enough, didn't go very well. They at least picked their best batting lineup this time round, mostly. The bowling contingent certainly contains a few surprises, but it did the business. So maybe
and that was the surprise today. Normally the surprise is like, oh wow, look how far that ball's gone. But yesterday it was, oh wow, they've actually taken some wickets. Just a quick shout out to RK in the old live chat. He says, just kidding about the predictions, guys. You are the best cricket podcast. Keep going around. It's not even close. That's good feedback, isn't it? Keep up the good work. We'll catch up on iTunes later. Thank you, RK. Dan, they batted Suryakumar Yadav 3 today. I'm sure we talked about that last time you were on the podcast. Does it? On the one hand, I think it makes sense to put your best player, your most versatile player at 3, who can exploit the power play, but also sort of rebuild or go up through the gears. On the other hand, it's just a batting position, isn't it? It doesn't make any difference, or it doesn't make that much difference whether he's 3 or 4, does it? Which of those arguments do you buy? Do you what percentage of this victory would you attribute to them having Sky at 3 instead of 5?
Yeah, I think it's a real waste at 5. This is just not going to face enough balls to have an influence on a game when his ability dictates that he should have an influence on a game. So I think looking at that, you'd suggest that 3 or 4 would be his best spot. Now, 3, I think you might... the general dynamic for a 3 is they probably want to be a pretty good pace hitter compared to spin, because a lot of the time they're going to be batting in the power play. 4, it's very, very difficult to find a good 4. A 4 who can play spin well, can play pace well, can look to accumulate if the situation needs that, or hit if the situation needs that. Very, very few players who are skilled and flexible enough to do that. I think he's probably one of the few who could. But yeah, no, it's good to see him not a 5. And 5 is just, why would you back one of the best players in the whole tournament at 5?
I don't know. I mean, ask Jai Wardner.
I'd rather ask why Tim David hasn't been playing.
Well, I mean that was weird as well, Max. I mean he had a couple of cheap dismissals, didn't he? Up top, and I think he got completely deceived by Googly and looked like a club cricketer, which is never brilliant. The optics on that look bad, don't they? But it did seem that this iteration of the top 6 was their best. Are you happy to see him back in the team?
Yeah, I think so. I think he probably didn't get a fair crack, did he? But they've done that quite a lot this year, Mumbai, haven't they? They've been very reactive, possibly overreactive. Unless, of course, you're Curran Pollard, who they haven't bothered bowling at all, really, and has had a bit of a stinker with the bat, to be honest, isn't he? He's you're not going to drop Curran Pollard, but it's like it's a devil's advocate argument, because Tymel Mills had a couple of bad games and just got ditched pretty quickly. Tim David had a couple of bad games, and the replacement was to play literally a child. I know he's a very highly rated child, but his name is Baby AB. So
he's not even teenager AB.
Yeah, it's a big call to make, and I think he probably didn't get a fair crack. So that's that's where perhaps their sort of overreactiveness has cost them slightly, but ultimately they've put together a side which should be competitive, and it just hasn't performed over the course of the IPL. We thought at the start we could at least put it down to Suryakumar Yadav not being available. That was the get out clause. Oh well, if Sky was playing, they win this game, and they don't make the most of actually having him, and they lose as well. And it's all very strange, muddled thinking. Nice to see them actually win a game, but still, obviously, it's not a great time to be Mumbai Indians.
A question for you, Dan, in terms of...
Sorry, can I just extend on what Max was saying, if that's okay?
Yeah.
It's fresh in my head. Max said, and I agree with him, although I don't want to agree with him. I do. And he said the words to the effect that guys like Pollard are undroppable, presumably due to status, whereas a guy like Tim David or Tymel Mills seems to be more dispensable if you're going to take that reactionary approach at Mumbai. And again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about these ultimately. I'm going to be honest. I think they're declining legends of the game. How bad do you have to be before your place is under threat? Because Pollard and Rohit Sharma's numbers this year are not pretty.
They're ugly. They're really ugly. I mean, Rohit will get away with it, won't he? And perhaps rightly, because he's the captain and he's a domestic player, so he's not such a liability.
You can't captain all 3 formats, man. That's the problem. Too much pressure.
But Pollard here, averaging 15.6 with the bat. He's batted, I think, in every game as well. So it's not cherry picking too much. I don't think. Striking at 120, so it's not even quick runs.
It's not
quick runs. The question I was going to ask you, Dan, is sort of an extension of this. If we're talking about declining legends and who could replace them, so we saw Dewalt Brevis come in, and I think his numbers averaging 20 at 155. They're not world beating.
Well, I think they're better than what we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, probably.
He's done well.
They're decent, and he's shown some pretty big flashes that there's some potential there. Could he just do what Pollard's doing? Could he be the number 5? Why? I mean, in the matches I've seen him play, and I think there's potentially a little bit of a weakness to power play bowling. So I'm not sure number 3 necessarily makes sense at this point in his career, anyway. A little bit later on in the innings, I tell him to come in and smack it down the ground. I mean, he can't be any worse than Pollard, right?
Well, he's shown 6 hitting ability in this tournament, so even when the field's out, he can clear them. If you're going to get rid of Pollard, you could bring him in at 5, or you could bring him in at 6 and move David up to 5. Either or, fine.
Max, would you like to see that? It'd be quite a statement, wouldn't it?
It would
Pollard
be. It'd be a
goes,
massive. It'd be a massive statement. But we've seen some pretty big statements, haven't we, this weekend with Dhoni and Jadeja and Shubman Gill getting completely roasted on Twitter. So I think I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I mean, and what have you got to lose? You're out. You're out of the tournament. Like, why not give the guy? He's just you started playing him because you thought Tim David's not doing the job. He's had a few decent innings. And then you've ditched him again and brought back Tim David. You're playing a couple of other guys like Kartikaya or whatever. So you might as well. It's not going to harm the team the way he's playing at the moment. So I'd say 100% bring him in, try a few different things for the last few games, and get him a chance to bed in for next year.
I might be wrong about Pollard as well. And obviously, like we do when the IPL's not on, our focus tends to be slightly more on test matches, ICC tournaments, that sort of thing, rather than all the or for myself and Max anyway. Dan, I mean, it's probably not the same for you. Rather than some of the smaller franchise tournaments. But I think I'm right in saying that Pollard hasn't really been cooking with gas, let's say, anywhere in the world apart from last year's IPL in the last sort of 18 months.
I think that was a criticism levelled at him from West Indies supporters, is that the Mumbai Indians version of Pollard was better than the West Indies version. And now the Mumbai Indians version of Pollard hasn't turned up either.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that goes. I want to talk a little bit about Rajasthan Royals. It's their, I want to say, third loss of the season. It could be their second. Max, it's your turn to check the table, but I think it's their third. Yeah, they did some interesting things, I think. Well, there's two things I want to ask about. Like, one, Josh Buttler's innings. And I'll address that to you, Dan, and then I want to talk about one of their bowling mistakes. Butler opening up and doing what he did. What was going on there? Do you think that was just a case of a poor pitch, or did Mumbai Indians come up with a plan, or did Josh Buttler just bat really badly and not get out? Why did he end up looking so average?
Could it be that he just wants the orange cap? No, in all seriousness, no. I mean, I think it was really, really difficult for him to sustain the level that he's exhibited in the first half of the tournament. And while I expect him to be better than this, maybe it was just a little bit of mean reversion, put our people's expectations on him too high. And I know he took on Shakeen at the end, but I want to make the point now, before we talk about the final game on Saturday, that Buttler scored 67 off 52 balls. I'll leave it at that for the moment. We're debating whether that's a good innings or a bad innings.
I know where it's going.
Jack knows where I'm going with this. We'll leave it for a few minutes. He got 67 off 52, and we think that's a bad innings. Okay, we lean towards it being a bad innings.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually, if I was going to be maybe a slightly dissenting voice, I didn't think it was a net negative innings. I think, bearing in mind the rest of the scores and the context that some of that innings was played in, and the pitch, and the fact that he did recover it by hitting 4 sixes in 4 balls, I think it probably, if we say the match at the beginning of the match, it was a 50-50, like depending on the chances of either team, and that probably isn't true. The Royals were maybe slight favourites, but let's, for the sake of this thought exercise, say it was 50-50. Then you put that Josh Buttler innings into that Rajasthan innings. I don't think it has a huge impact on the match being 50-50, and it may, in fact, actually, bearing in mind the rest of the context, slightly be positive. Not hugely positive. It's not like, oh wow, Josh Buttler, look at him racing ahead in the orange cap. But I don't think, some people were like, oh, why are you not giving Josh Buttler pelters? I mean, like, it wasn't a great innings. At one point, it definitely was a bad innings, but he did then hit 4 sixes in 4 balls and turn it into probably about an average score.
Yeah, I mean, without that, he's getting some serious tap for a match-losing innings, isn't he? And he's saved himself from that ignominy, but
I think it's still Sorry,
No, that's me done. It's fine. Carry on.
I think it's very difficult to level any criticism at a guy who scores 67 off 52 when you've got one of the guys who's got 17 off 20 and one's got 6 not out of 14 balls in your team.
Yeah.
15 or 15. Yeah, 15 or 15 as well.
Yeah, that's effectively what I'd say. Last point I want to make on this match is the strange decision. Let's say the curious decision that Sanju Samson made to go to Daryl Mitchell after the power play. So they'd just picked up a wicket, and it was quite a crucial one. They got rid of Ishan Kishan, who was looking pretty good. It's Sky and Tilak Varma at the crease. Now Tilak Varma's got a little bit of reputation for sort of being a spin hitter, but surely, Max, the correct call there, or the call that's going to put the most pressure on the Mumbai batting lineup, is to throw the ball to the current purple cap holder, Yuzi Chahal, and not, New Zealand backup player Daryl Mitchell.
But that's exactly what they wanted you to do. That's exactly what they expected. So it was a curveball.
It was the bluff.
It was 4D chess. Unfortunately, they completely left the queen open, and it got taken by Bishop, and it was a disaster. Jack's been playing some chess, right? I thought I'd bring in some chess. It was a particularly strange thing. If you're trying to squeeze in an over of someone from somewhere, to like maybe balance out some of the other guys who might be weaker bowlers, then you can maybe understand bowling Daryl Mitchell at some point. Maybe not when the opposition's best batsman.
I don't think you can ever tolerate that. I'm sorry.
No, well, I'm thinking like maybe if you have to make up like a couple of overs from someone who you're not banker overs. But Rajasthan Royal have got Trent Bolt, Prashant Krishna, Ravi Ashwin, Yuzi Chahal, and Kuldeep Sen, who's been really good for the last basically since they came into the team. So you've got 20 overs. You don't need to bowl Daryl Mitchell. So aside from when he bowling him at all was mental, and then bowling him when you've got Sky at the crease.
I tweeted, and this is one of my favourite tweets ever, that trying to
one of mine. I've got to tell you.
Trying to sneak an over of Daryl Mitchell past Surya Kumar Yadav is like trying to sneak a plate of lamb chops past a wolf. And it kind of got the treatment. It's not actually. It's not the first time Sampson's done this though, is it? Because who did he bowl Rian Parag to? And Rian Parag, like some of those balls still haven't landed. Somebody, I don't know if it's not, if it doesn't come to either of you, somebody in the chat.
No, I remember seeing the over, but I can't tell you who was batting.
It was like a proper bait over. Like, let's just throw this out there and see what happens. And I'm sure it went for 3 sixes. And
it's an interesting
one.
I think that this is where teams look at data and they perhaps don't interpret it how it should be interpreted, or they leave themselves open to being exploited by perhaps first level thinking when they're looking at the data. So in the IPL, over 7 is, I think from memory, is the lowest non-scoring power play over in a team's innings on average.
So I think
over 7.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah. So basically, what people do, or what some people seem to try and do, is because they think that because it's the lowest scoring over, that automatically means that you're not going to be taken on. So they'll try and burn an over from somebody.
There's a lack of understanding of causality in that, isn't there?
Somewhat. But they're forgetting the Surya Kumar Yadav is on strike. He's probably one of the best batters in the IPL. So who probably doesn't feature that heavily in the seventh over sample size. So perhaps if you were to filter batters of Surya Kumar Yadav's quality in the 7th over, the results might be completely different.
And also, if you just took us a sample of 7th overs bowled by part-time medium pacers, it would probably be a very different story as well. Because I think normally your 7th over is bowled by your best spinner, and the field's just gone out. So there's a couple of things there. that
seventh over part timer against world class batter.
Different ball game, isn't it?
So yeah, that's one thing, and actually, I really hate this from a captaincy point of view as well. Is that, and I see it a lot, and it irritates me. I've got to tell you, is that teams are on top in matches, and a lot of the time I think, all right, well, we're on top, so we're burning over off someone. Whereas I quite like just keeping your foot on the accelerator.
That's what you do in Sunday cricket in
Yeah.
village cricket in England. If you take a couple of wickets early, then you bring on a pie chucker to make sure that the other team gets a decent score. You don't do it in the IPL.
And then almost let them score too many and nearly lose.
It was really strange. Vic London, I don't know if either of you knew this, but I've verified this while you were chatting away there. Vic London has pointed out that Yuzi Chahal was an Indian chess champion. He was
I think I'd heard that. Yeah.
Can we set up a Chahal versus
Jack v
Chahal?
Chahal?
Get absolutely destroyed. I mean, I played a couple of games against Sudeep, who's a patron of ours, and he's like 1,600 rating points. Chahal's like, and I get completely cleaned up in every game. Chahal's like 2,000, or he was before he quit to become cricketer. He actually, I thought, speaking of how this game could have gone, he had a really good shout on Surya Kumar Yadav, who was sweeping an LBW, and it was not out on umpire's call, hitting the bails. That could have been a different match. Should we move on to the? Oh, go on, Dan.
Have one more chess pun.
Yeah.
Could we say that Mitchell's over castled Rajasthan's ambitions of winning this match?
I could. I mean, I don't know if that quite works from a chess point of view, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it. Max, the morning game yesterday. Do you want me to do this one as well, or do you know what happened?
Well, I've done two. You can do two. Why not? Let's go split down the middle.
It's I've got to get it up. It's not democracy, is it? Because that isn't what democracy is. Socialism, communism. That's what we do on the podcast. That's very, very definitely not democracy. RCB v Gujarat Titans. Virat Kohli scored an amazing 58 or 53 balls in the first innings. Patadar, he scored some runs as well, 52 or 32, and RCB posted 170. I'll leave it there without commentary for now. I'm sure we'll get to the salient points. In response, the Gujarat Titans did what they kind of always do. They meandered along. Shubman Gill didn't do that much. Then he got rinsed by a delivery company on Twitter. Hardik Pandya didn't get any runs in this match, and it looked like RCB were gonna win, take their record to 6-4, and be set up pretty well for the run-in. But we hadn't properly factored in Twatia. Once again,
we forgot.
Why? You know what? I didn't forget. I thought that I'm never going to call a Gujarat game until Twatia is out.
You can never forget Twatia.
He gets 43 from 25. At the other end, David Miller, Killer Miller, 39 from 24, and they win the game pretty easily. I said the one thing. Even till late in the game, I thought RCB actually had a chance because they had some decent death bowling, but Miller and Twatia. My summaries are not as good as yours, Max. I think it's fair to say that's the summary. Gujarat won. Dan, I want to talk to you about Twatia first of all.
Thanks.
Exactly how good a bargain was the 9 crore they spent on Twatia?
I don't even know where to start. I mean, I actually do like him as a player in terms of. I mean, obviously he hasn't really been bowling, but theoretically he's like a non-disastrous leg spinner, and basically seems to have turned into this complete intent merchant finisher. I mean, Gujarat at the moment are like absolutely delighted with the 9 crore that they spent, but I don't think many people in advance of this tournament predicted it. And I think that this is where you have the variance of a 14 match season where like some like random guys get like man the match 4 or 5 times. But then if it was like a 38 game season like the Premier League in football, they'd probably just like fade away like Michael Ricketts did or someone like that. You know, I think where we can talk about, is it Brian McBride is the one you like to mention, don't you?
Yeah.
On this pod.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, and this is the variance of T20 cricket. There's you run this season again, there's probably a decent chance he gets like 5 or 5 balls and gets caught in a boundary quite a few times.
No, mate, he's the real deal.
Yeah,
Thrice is the mustard.
Yeah, I think that's the only logical conclusion we can draw. But if you wanted to look at some of his previous seasons, last year he averaged 15.5 at a strike rate of 105. Now, different pitches, for sure. He's quite good at belting pace bowling, and last year that was probably slightly harder to do because of the surfaces they were played on. Or they were
he likes pace on for sure.
Yeah. 2020 was decent. That was the original year of Twatia. Average 42 at 140. But that's the sort of, that's it really. If you look back through his career, before that he was a very marginal player. 5, 8, and 3 matches in.
What's he on this year?
This season he's got 179 runs at 161. He's right up there with the best finishers in the league. And I think, are you aware of the? So I think you can make a case that Twatia has been the most valuable player in the tournament. Now there's a little bit of you have to make a little bit of a leap here. But are you sort of vaguely aware of the sort of win probability added stat?
Yeah, wins out above replacement. Yeah.
So not wins above replacement. Win probability added. So in other words, like the entry point of this player into the game, like what was the chances of their team winning, and what were the chances of the team winning after their piece had been said.
Yes.
Is that because so many times at the end of their piece the win probability is 100%?
Well, yeah, he's this is a few times, and like so you only get half of the value of that win, don't you? Or you don't get the whole thing. Someone at the other end, and David Miller actually played a pretty good innings yesterday. Like it'll be overshadowed because it's Twatia and that's the brand. But so yesterday I think when they came together, I was sort of watching along this. I often look at the Google Win Predictor to tell me what to think. And
just not the one.
Yeah, and
you're an independent thinker.
No, man, big tech. And Twatia and Miller, I think when they came together, they had about a 20% chance of winning. So it wasn't curtains, but it wasn't much. And then by the end, they won it. They probably chopped the win percentage there. He gets 0.4 of a win under win probability added. And I think if you looked at that,
right,
he'd be right up there. Now, that isn't a perfect metric because obviously there's loads of context stuff in there, and Dan's already talked about variance. And like, I think clearly anybody rational and sane would say that what Joss Buttler has achieved with the number of runs he scored at the pace he scored them, that is a more valuable contribution besides season. But if you pick and choose a little bit, I think you can make a compelling case.
The obvious issue with the WinViz added thing is that it goes all over the place in the last 5 overs of the game. And Joss Buttler most of the time has been doing it the first 5 overs or first 20 overs or whatever. But Twatia has won Gujarat Titans as many points as the Craw he cost. So that's payback for me. 1 point per Craw. That's my baseline.
I mean, I think it is actually at this point in time, it's pretty difficult to make an argument that it wasn't worth them spending that money on him. And at the time when they did it, it looked insane. Like they had Rashid Khan, a lower order hitter who bowled leg spin, and they were like, yeah, we'll just spend 25% of our remaining budget on exactly that player. But
they don't even bowl him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that can't. This is the thing. That can't. When they shelled out, that can't have been the plan. They can't have been thinking, "Hey, we'll make him the finisher and he'll bat like Andre Russell." That can't have been the thought process. They must have thought they were buying some kind of all rounder, and it was quite a hot market for all rounders, wasn't it? So. it went up and up and up, and probably instead of being like, let's buy an all-rounder, they were like, let's buy Rahul Tewatia, and just didn't.
I love it. I think it's.
But you can't, and this is actually one of the definitely one of the great things about the IPL, isn't it? That 10 years ago, we never hear about Rahul Tewatia. He's not going to play for India, or he might play for India once. He's going to be at best a very marginal selection.
Actually, I got a question on Twitter about that.
He's at the World Cup, mate.
He's not. Is he in their best? I mean, I don't know. I don't think he's in their best 15.
No, probably not. But he's going.
I don't think he will. I'm just going to say I think Jadeja and Hardik Pandya are the two all-rounders, and they're better players than him. I don't think.
In the squad, he'll be in the squad. Get him in there.
I'm not convinced that he will be. I would be surprised. I think he might play for them at some point in like a series against Bangladesh. But I would be surprised if he ever played in like a serious match for the India national team. But because of the IPL and because of the exposure and so on, we've got this unbelievable cricketing story, and it's really cut through, and it shows like sort of it shows the value that the tournament sort of adds to the game at large. That characters like this, the Iceman, they're calling him on commentary. I don't know if anyone actually calls him the Iceman, but like any of his friends, maybe they do. He doesn't actually seem that icy. I mean, like he seems pretty pumped up. He's flexing at the end and all of that. Dhoni's the Iceman, but
equivalent of Gerwin Price.
That's an extremely niche darts reference.
That's not what you want to be, though, is it? It's not what you want to be.
So yeah, I'm enjoying the Tewatia ride. Long may it continue.
Yeah.
Thumbs up from me.
Should we get to the big story?
What was the big story?
A certain former Indian captain.
I nearly forgot about this. Talking about Tewatia, carried away. So we've. Well, where there were a few innings a little bit like this in this category of innings. Let's say over the weekend, Suryakumar Yadav scored slower than the asking rate, I think, in their match against the team they beat. Sorry, I just went from
the Royals.
My brain. Butler did it, didn't he? King Legend looked like he was going to do it, and then actually doesn't do it. This really takes a biscuit, though, doesn't it, Dan? The score that Kohli gets. I mean, it's fair to say, I think, here that was a match-losing innings.
Well, I think we sort of earlier on talked about Butler, and we came to the consensus that it probably wasn't net negative. I think we're going to struggle to justify the same for here. So Butler 67 off 52. Kohli scored 9 runs fewer, facing 1 ball more. 6 fours, 1 6. 7 boundaries and 53 balls. It is very, very difficult to hit an above average score and win the boundary count for a match when your opener does that. Yet we see these stories of redemption. The Kohli is back. No, he struck at 109. Would have been a great ODI innings.
It was a really good ODI. It would have been a fantastic ODI innings, actually. Yeah. It was basically risk-free.
Was it an innings from a man who wants to get back into some form?
Well, I would argue that this is the wrong kind of form, but he'll probably say it's the right kind of form.
Yeah. I mean, what does this actually achieve?
Nothing. And if we talk about the money spent, if you work out that Tewatia is a core a point, I'm not sure what Kohli's had.
No, it's well, I mean, it's really average, isn't it? I think the strike rate of the rest of the team was 156. This is the other thing about the Butler innings. The Butler innings happened in a game where 40 fewer runs, I think, scored across, or 25 fewer runs were scored across. Basically, in fact, no, exactly the same number of balls. So he scored quicker in a lower scoring match. This is a reasonably high scoring game, 170 v 174, and Gujarat probably don't win if they need 184, which I think, had Dinesh Karthik and Shabazz faced half the balls Kohli faced, which may be reasonable to assume they would have done between them had they not entered the game in the 18th over or the 17th and 18th over. I think that Royal Challengers Bangalore probably do get 180 or 180 plus and win this match. And that is largely, I'm afraid to say, down to Virat Kohli. As nice as it is to see him score runs, and it is, it's people say it's good for cricket, don't they? Virat Kohli scoring runs, and they're probably an element of that. He is the most famous guy. He's incredibly marketable. He's a theatrical character, Shakespearean almost, isn't he? In what he brings to the table, the melodrama. But
Boys, I've got a question.
can't have it. You can't have that. He's used nearly half the balls and delivered nothing.
At the age of 33, this is my question. At the age of 33, has the T20 format evolved past Virat Kohli?
Yeah, that's why I was wondering this actually, and I was thinking about this with respect to what he seemed to be able to do, let's say 5 years ago, and what he seems to be able to do now. And I did wonder whether the game... So he had seasons, didn't he, where he scored lots of runs and he scored them at a strike rate in the 140s, and or maybe a couple of seasons. And it was consistent. And he has actually been very good in international cricket,
yes.
Arguably a slightly lower standard. But he has shown that there's something, or there was at some point, something in his game that meant that he was a viable option. And
No, definitely.
probably in that KL Rahul kind of bracket where it's maybe slightly overrated and maybe be better off the strike rate 10 higher and an average 10 lower or something like that. But definitely not a drag on the side. I wonder whether teams have got a little bit better. I'm thinking here particularly in the middle overs at making boundaries slightly harder to hit for players that are perhaps a little bit one-dimensional. So there's another player that I think this applies to slightly, is Shubman Gill. When it looks good, it looks really good, hits the ball very hard, but he hits the ball to the same areas on the floor a lot. So it means there's very often a fielder in play. And I think it's possible to sort of contain Kohli, and because he doesn't do anything differently. You never see him like bust out a slog sweep and take a ball from way outside off stump and hit it over mid-wicket or something like that, do you? Or scoop or ramp or do anything actually really to manipulate the field away from where you'd expect Virat Kohli to hit the ball. It's like all in the V, middle of the bat, carpet, all the way out to the guy at cover who long barriers it and throws it in and it's a single. There's a lot of that kind of action, and I wonder maybe 5 years ago, and it's very difficult to recall what like memories from 5 years ago. But I wonder whether players were just a little bit weren't as wise to that, and maybe bowling plans have improved. So now what happens is the bowler, let's say, hangs it outside off stump instead of looking for a wicket and just lets Kohli smack it to the boundary fielder at long off or cover. Kohli takes a single, you're happy, he's still in, he's happy. Whereas maybe 5 years ago, that bowler doesn't just keep it outside off stump. Maybe they go looking for a wicket and he picks one up and puts it in the stand. Yeah. And that's how he's able to... Because he does have that shot over long on is really attractive, and he did it yesterday. He still has, if you come into his arc, the smash back down the ground. But they don't seem to... It doesn't seem to be on as much. So yes, I'm saying Dan, I think.
In terms of planning, opposition planning.
That was my sense yesterday.
Yeah, there's a few things, aren't there? Like we know for ourselves that stats and analysis in cricket is something that's fairly new to the sport for the modern day. So there's that aspect of it, and then like you just said, Dan, like you look at an opposition team and like who's the first guy you're going to try and shut down? It's the man who scored more IPL runs than literally anyone else. So he's victim of his own success. New stats and bowling, like you said, like 5 years ago, it was 5-10 years ago, it's like all about Yorkers, isn't it? Yorkers. And now so much bang it into the pitch, slow ball, wide Yorkers, hide it outside off stump. There's so much more variation now in bowling and the way people approach things that you do have to be able to do so much more as a batsman to kind of sort of negate that and be able to take on different kinds of bowling.
My sense as well, and this again, you maybe want to look at the data or look at the bowling pool from 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or whatever. I think the quality of spinner, and particularly leg spinner, has gone up reasonably substantially in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Particularly the domestic pool. I think there are a lot of extremely impressive leg spinners that would get into loads of nations' front 11s that are just sort of knocking around the IPL, and that's that's why Darren Goff kicks off about Adil Rashid every year, isn't it? Because he doesn't get picked up at the York. But there's a reason for it. There's loads of excellent leg spinners, and Kohli does have probably a little bit of a weakness against leg spinners, at least in terms of what he's able to do with them. And I wonder if that's he's a little bit of a victim of that. Now they say in sort of Test cricket that he's one of the guys that suffered from the rise in the number of wobble balls bowled. So the delivery where obviously the seam oscillates slightly and it goes either way off the pitch, because he was a guy that sort of dominated it off stump, hit a lot of drives on the up. That style of cricketer is slightly less valuable, or it's slightly harder to play that well in Test cricket.
Less effective. Yeah.
So let's say that carries through a little bit into and I think that's almost certainly true in Test cricket. Actually, that's something that he's battling with. I don't think he's got way worse. I think the bowlers have just got better at something that he used to be able to, or are doing something now that he isn't equipped to deal with. But let's say that happens a little bit in the power play as well in T20 cricket. So that makes one of the things he was excellent at harder to do, and then you add onto that the quality of spinner has risen substantially, and then you add onto that the bowling plans are better. And then you add onto that as well, as you said, Max, that he's going to be one of the most highly analysed players in the tournament because of what his peak in theory is. Then you've got like a horrible cocktail if you're Virat Kohli, haven't you? And then you add onto that as well. Maybe at 33, there's a little bit of natural decline happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, 50, what was it? 58 from 53 balls. Not a good innings.
I recommend a margarita. It's a far better cocktail.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else from this match? Done Kohli.
Does that leave RCB pretty much out of the running?
No.
Or are they still very much?
They're well in it still.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say not out of the running, but not out of the running, but well, you would have said at the time, I suppose, on the Saturday, you'd have said it leaves them as probably more outsiders to qualify, but SRH going and losing, and Royals losing to Mumbai probably completely negates that.
I don't think. I think both of those teams are quite far from guaranteed a place in the next round. I think we've talked about why we don't think Sunrisers are good, so we won't go over that. But like Rajasthan are quite dependent on 3 or 4 batters doing a lot of heavy lifting. And in yesterday's match, one of them played an okay innings. Shimron Hetmeyer was not great. Samson gets a pass because he did it quickly. And they end up with a pretty average score. And I can see that happening 2 or 3 more times, can't you? I don't think. And even if you play well, even if Butler gets 80 or 50 balls, it doesn't mean that the other team, someone on the other team, can't get 80 or 50 balls and edge a match like that as well. Sometimes everything works and the bowling goes wrong. So I think there's some weaknesses there. I think there's room for a fair amount of churn. There could be. Look, I'm looking at the table now. 1, 2, 3, 4 teams could be on a 5-5 record after their next match. Yeah. And if the Royals lose, they'd be 6-4. Still in a good position to go through the Royals, right? But they're not by no means at this point guaranteed. They need to win at least 2 matches.
5 into 2, you reckon?
They need to win at least 2 out of 5 matches, and they've got decent odds of doing that, but it's not by any stretch a guarantee. And in the 3 that they lose, they probably need to not lose really badly.
And if you're 6-4 and the 4 teams below you are all 5-5, you've probably got less than a 50% chance of qualifying, even though you've got the better record. Because one of those 4 teams is going to have a run. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's certainly set up well for the denouement of the group stage. I think we can probably say at this point that Gujarat are going to make it. They need to win 1 of 5 matches to pretty much guarantee that. And I think that I think that will happen probably. Lucknow are also in pretty decent shape, healthy-ish net run rate. They need if they win 2 out of 4, then they're through, and 1 might be enough. And then after that, the teams we talked about, I think KKR, CSK, and Mumbai are out of it. Well, we knew that. That's not new. Are we ready to wrap up this show?
I've got loads of questions off Twitter if anyone wants.
Oh yeah, do it. Yeah, go for it.
They haven't tagged you guys in a lot of them, so
that's okay. You can do your own Q&A.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. First of all, is it time from Razzie? Is it time to move away from a term like anchor in T20 cricket? Yesterday with Kohli, today with Williamson. Is there a place for these kind of innings? I have a one-word answer, and that is no.
You could just add a W to the front of it.
So are we all in consensus there to reply to Razzie that is a no?
Okay. Any else?
Yeah. The Shepherd has, I don't know if that's Romario or somebody different, says, how can Stokes manage his workload and play the other 2 formats? Or if he decides to back out from one format, which do you think he'd choose, considering his potential IPL contract and others? So for me, it's extremely difficult for a cricketer, especially an all-rounder, to play 3 formats. Not just from a workload perspective, but also a skill set perspective. And I think he could quite conceivably move away from the T20 sphere, and which would mean IPL as well. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that makes sense as well.
Yeah, I think there's no point in him playing England T20s at the end of big series. No, he might as well just pick someone else. He's not. That wouldn't have him in England's best T20 side anyway. So
I think we've seen the peak of Stokes in T20 cricket, and he was all right. He was all right at one point. He might be another player a bit like Kohli. The game's just moved slightly on from what he can offer with bat and ball, which is fine. What I'd actually be interested in is whether Joe Root has another serious crack at T20 cricket. We've talked about Kohli and Williamson, it not working for them. I'd be interested to see whether Root went the same way, or whether he does something slightly differently, or whatever. I think there are a couple of things that Root does really well that augur quite well, particularly sweeping. That might help, but we'll see. I don't know if he'll try that.
With him. He's Joe Root's noted as a very good player of spin when we're talking about Test cricket, but his strike rate against spin in T20 in recent years is pretty mediocre. So that would be a question mark he'd definitely have to address. The other 2 things I would say is, one, he's got quite mediocre 6 hitting numbers as well. So again, you look at him and you think he's going to be in that Kohli Williamson kind of bracket, but at least he does have a secondary skill set.
Can bowl,
yeah. So he can be pretty useful matchup bowler as an offie.
RK asked on this topic, how much would you bid for Stokes knowing he wouldn't be available for the playoffs? I mean, if I probably wouldn't pick him up.
I wouldn't.
For the IPL.
100 rupees, Vic London said.
Yeah. And one last one.
Yep.
If we got one, time for one more. From Abe Warrior. Interesting, actually, the one for all of us, I think, here. Does Sanju Samson make your 11 for India in the next T20 World Cup?
That's a pretty tricky one. I think he would be in my squad of players. I think he might. So there's a couple of tricky calls here, aren't there, around who they give the gloves to. So you could in theory give it to KL. You could give it to Ishan Kishan, maybe Rishabh Pant, or Pant is probably the incumbent. I'm not sure that there's much between any of the sort of 4 players, Samson included, and I think Samson might actually be a slightly better batter in T20 cricket than those 4. I suspect they won't because of issues of seniority, and they'll we were at the beginning of this podcast. We said, well, at what point do you say get out the team to somebody in a franchise? At what point do you say to Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma get out the national T20 team? While they're there, I don't think Samson can fit in.
Yeah.
Tricky one.
I'd probably rather have him at the moment.
I like him. Yeah.
My views are exactly the same as yours, Jack.
Yeah. All right. Right. We're going to
yeah.
wrap up. It's been quite a long one today, but there was a lot of action. So it's been fun. See you later if you're at home. Check out the show notes for messages from us and sign up as a Patreon, etc. We will be back on Wednesday with more IPL.